My talk this evening is called "What Do I Want to Be When I Grow Up?" And we'll come to that in a minute. But I'm a weird kind of engineer. You wouldn't want me to come and fix your car or anything like that. My engineering is all about people, and very sort of social and psychological engineering. And that's because when we make things, who do we make things for? Well, we make them for people. Yeah, and we cannot divorce the people from the process. And I think that's really important, and I'm going to come back to that in a minute. So the first the question is, what do I want to be when I grow up? And I want you to be honest with me now and stick your hand up if you still don't know what you want to be when you grow up. Yes, good. Excellent, fantastic, that's everybody, great. So when I was 10, I told my mum when I grew up I wanted to be a big red flower. Yeah, I see it. That's it. Have I made it there yet, young man? Am I a big red flower yet? No, not yet. I'm big. No, let's not lie about that, but I'm not a big red flower. And that is fine. That's okay. Yeah, we're still growing and we still don't know what we want to be when we grow up. And I think that's a really, really important thing for us to consider. And actually, we're asking the wrong question. And we've been asking the wrong question forever. So I look at my little daughters and they come in and they go, "Daddy, I want to be a nurse." Or, "Daddy, I want to be a dancer." Yeah, and go, great, that's fantastic. But who do you want to be when you grow up? Yeah? What is it about you that you want to really portray in life when you grow up? Because we pigeonhole ourselves from such a young age when we think about what we want to be. Okay, so how many of you want to be engineers? How many of you thought it's a really good idea? And do you know what kind of engineer you want to be? Good. I'm glad you don't. That's really good. And we don't do ourselves any favors. I love working with cars, so I'm going to be an automotive engineer. I want to be an aerospace engineer. I want to change the world, whatever it might be. But we pigeonhole ourselves so early on, and we actually need to think more around who do we want to be? What is it we like? What is it that we enjoy? What have we got passion for? Rather than what? Because that sets you on a course that can be really, really difficult to come back from. And just as a hint around engineering, physics and maths does not a good engineer make. Okay, I've got computers that can do that. That's fine. Okay, what we're actually missing from engineering in 2024 is creativity. We haven't got enough design engineers. We haven't got enough people that can come up with new ideas and invent things. And don't care what anyone says about AI, it will never do that. As when it does, well, just go and watch The Terminator and you'll find out what happens. So think about what you're passionate about. Now, for me, I'm really lucky. So my role here at the university is I focus on the future. And for me, that's the dream job. Because when I was in school, I always used to get told off for daydreaming. And now that is my job. I get to spend every day sitting around thinking about stuff rather than worrying about what's happening now. I don't care what's happening now. I'm worried about what's happening in 5 years' time. That's where I live my life. And engineering is changing massively and the world is changing massively. So you're going to hear later from some guys who work in automotive, 91% of all automotive roles need to change as a result of electric vehicles. 91%. That's a lot. Over half of the people that work in our energy and utilities sector will need to be replaced by 2030. That's a lot. If I want to have a domestic battery manufacturing industry in this country, I need 250,000 people by 2040. And they're not all going to be you guys who are coming out of school. So my role is entirely thinking about where does everyone come from? What skills do they need? How do we translate that into the kinds of roles that we can see in the future? And what we start to think about, again, looking at what people enjoy doing rather than what do I want to be when I grow up. So to give you a small example, if we're thinking about a battery factory, one of the main roles in a battery factory is mixing stuff. And we've actually found that there's more alignment with the job of a baker than of an engineer in that particular role. So it's not all about just going and doing these kinds of things. Now, I'm going to use the world's been full recently with the word unprecedented. It's unprecedented this and unprecedented that. Well, that's a load of rubbish in this case. Okay, this is entirely precedented. Change is always happening. I was listening to Stephen Fry's Victorian Secrets. If you haven't listened to that yet, it's good. I know he's a crusty old white dude, but he's pretty funny. And And one of the things he's talking about is, how that first transatlantic telephone call, sort of 150 years ago. I mean, from having to send a letter that takes weeks to get there to just being able to talk to somebody on the other side of the world, can you imagine how that changed things? How big of an impact that was? We haven't got anything today that's near that. And yet the world kept turning, and people kept doing their work. No one fell over. We didn't all disappear. So this is entirely precedented. But the difference now is the world is changing faster, and the things that are changing are bigger. Yeah, you could arguably say that 150 years we've used exactly the same technology to communicate, and those of you that aren't aware, we've just turned off all the analog telephones. They don't exist anymore. So that's 150 years of translation, whereas, in the past 20 years, probably more has changed more quickly. So we need to think about focusing on the things that enable that rather than the jobs. So in the olden days, and by the olden days I mean today, because I'm not living today, we think about sectors. You're going to hear from the automotive sector or the aerospace sector or utilities. And they were hard and fast. If you worked in one, you didn't move, or it was really hard to move from one to the other. And what they would do is they would replicate, and you'd get things kind of changing slowly over time. So actually things that should be the same become different. So we now think about what enables those sectors. And we think about batteries and motors, software engineering, robotics. If you can do those things, then you can work pretty much anywhere. Okay? The same motors that go in an electric vehicle, would anyone like to hazard a guess which traditional industry uses the most after the automotive sector? You won't guess, but you can try. Go on. Somebody give me an idea. Which industry uses the most number of motors after the motor vehicle sector? Go on. Have a guess. Anything. Come on. Just shout at me. Medicine. Sorry, medicine? No, not medicine. It's a good one, though. Good guess. No? Air conditioning, that's pretty good. No. Lego, that's a nice one. No, unfortunately not. It's really boring. It's the food and drink sector. All the conveyor belts and things that go in the food and drink sector use exactly the same technology goes in an electric car, and they're the second biggest consumer of that. How many of you have ever thought about being an engineer in the food and drink sector? No, probably not. We don't even think about these things. So it's about thinking, what are those enabling technologies and what do they enable me to do? So finally, the last thing I wanted to kind of consider is what are some of the skills that we're looking for in the future? And they're not technical skills on the whole. We're not those you can acquire. Anyone can learn a technical skill. But it's things about you that are important. Now, one of the things that you will find when you go and apply for a job is they'll say, why do you think you're going to fit into this organization? And you'll tell them how wonderful their company is and how you research them online and all the wonderful things they do. And to be perfectly honest with you, I don't care. What you have to think about is, what are you going to bring that they don't already have? That's more important. Yeah, so when I interview people for jobs, I ask them that. What are you going to bring here that we don't already have? Why are you valuable? And we really value that. And that is more and more valuable these days as, there are more and more young people with, 3 A stars at A level and have done X, Y, and Z. We really want something that stands out. Okay, so what are you going to add? What is your value add? If nothing else, go away tonight and think about what is your value add. And are you willing to continue learning? I'm still learning. Learning all kinds of fun things, and it's great. I'm currently doing a law conversion course because, engineering is not interesting enough for me, clearly. And the need to focus on sustainability. Now, I understand sustainability is a big thing, and to be perfectly honest with you, the idea that climate anxiety is a real medical thing in schools. I live with a science teacher, and she has to be careful how she talks about climate change because it causes anxiety. What a sad situation is that? But you can change that. We can make serious inroads into changing that. And that's part of what I do. I'm going to go to government. I'm going to say, we've got to stop teaching young people how to crack crude oil and teach them how to be more sustainable in their futures. We also need people that can be cross-functional. As I said, physics and maths do not a good engineer make. And that's partly because we need people that can work with other functions in a business now. You're not going to be able to sit in a darkened room anymore. I'll say this to people who are doing software engineering. They like to sit in darkened rooms, just typing on the keyboard, and it's like the comic book seller out of The Simpsons. But we can't hack that anymore. We need engineers that understand about marketing, finance, are able to engage across the company. So, and I apologize to those of you that have already picked your A-levels, but when you're thinking about these things, think about broadening yourself rather than narrowing yourself. It's really, really important. And finally, and my last point is, as I've said, we are about people. Engineering is a people business, and what is the benefit that you're going to bring to society? So the world of employment, the world of skills is changing, and it's going to continue to change. About 10 years ago, I kind of despaired and said, I'm really glad I'm not growing up today, because I thought the world was actually a bit crap. And now I think it's a much more exciting time. Many, many more opportunities in areas that you never even thought of. Okay? And so do not limit yourselves right now. So that's really all I wanted to honk on about tonight. I'll be around all evening, so feel free to come and have a chat. But if it's any consolation, I was crap at school. I joined the military, and life got better from there. But you don't want to hear about crusty old things like Harrier jump jets, because it's all when the world was black and white and that kind of stuff. So thank you very much. I'll hand over. Thanks, Will, before I carry on rambling. And I'll speak to you guys in a bit.